Speaker. And it's indeed a pleasure to be able to rise today and speak on behalf of my constituents from Selkirk-Interlake and talk about how important the Building Canada Fund is to our municipalities, talk about the importance of our Economic Action Plan is to our farmers and our commercial fishers and our small businesses that operate throughout the riding. Mr. Speaker, this fall, and as I do every fall, I go on a town tour. My riding is bigger than Nova Scotia, 56,000 square kilometres. And I went out and drove through September over 6,000 kilometres, visiting over 55 communities on multiple times to see, how things are going, to talk to people on the street, to visit people in the coffee shops, to meet with my municipal leaders, meet with businesses and tour their operations, and just get a good feel on how things are going at this point in time. And I can tell you that one thing that my municipal leaders are telling me is that they're excited about the new Building Canada plan. They really believe that the $53 billion commitment that we've made over the next 10 years will greatly benefit them. The one thing that they're extremely excited about is the Community Improvement Fund. That there is going to be over $32 billion available to them to invest in their public community places, into their roads, making sure that their recreational facilities are brought up to date. And I can tell you that they really appreciate the idea that we've taken the gas tax fund. First of all, they like the idea that we made it a permanent fixture in ongoing transfers from the federal government to municipalities. They appreciated that we doubled that gas tax fund a couple of years ago. And now we have untied it so that they can actually use it for whatever they see as being important to them. And so rather than just being used for green infrastructure or things that help with mass transit, which doesn't really work well in rural municipalities because we don't have buses in most of my communities. We don't have a rapid transit system in any of them. So actually having the gas tax fund being untied so they can use it on roads, on public places like halls and recreational facilities like the skating rink or the curling rink, those are things that are important to small rural communities. It's important because that's where people gather, where they meet, where they have fun, where they get healthy, where they get to see their kids or grandkids participate in sports. And so it is important to have those community focal points invested in through the gas tax fund and now through the Building Canada Fund because of the changes that we made in the Community Improvement Fund. There's over $14 billion as well in the Building Canada Fund to be used on provincial, national, and regional significant investments. And Mr. Speaker, we know that this could be anywhere from investing in port facilities to help with our trade, to ensuring that we have expanded highways and artery systems to move our truck transport, our commuter transport, making our roads safer, and I know that's also extremely important to my communities. We've also seen the ongoing investment of $6 billion in the continued existence of the infrastructure programs that we already have in place with the provinces and municipalities and the territories for 2014-15 and beyond. And so these are big, significant improvements for those municipalities or major projects that want to get underway, that want to look at private-public partnerships. And then the P3 fund is also there for them, and we've renewed that at $1.25 billion. Now, of course, the riding of Selkirk-Interlake is a large agricultural riding, both with grain farming and ranching and a lot of mixed operations. And I can tell you that the measures that are in this budget really does speak to their ability to continue to grow and prosper, taking advantage of marketplaces just like we just saw with the new comprehensive economic trade agreement with Europe. The European Union is a huge market, especially they're now available to my farmers and ranchers, like grain farmers. My beef and cattle operations are really excited about that trade deal. And one thing that was in this budget that they are talking about, that they are excited about, and one that really helps with that next generation to enter into farming is to actually double the current restricted farm loss income tax rule. So it has been for the last over 20 years. $8,750 per person who works part-time could claim that amount of their off-farm income as a restricted farm loss. So that actually works to their benefit. Well, we've doubled that to $17,500. So that really helps with those new entrants coming in that still have an off-farm job. And, in reality, Mr. Speaker, if you look at it, about 2/3 of farmers today have off-farm employment. And so this is a real good measure to help those younger farmers out, to help those that rely on off-farm income, to be able to take some of those earnings and allow it to be used against any farm losses that they have. So it is a really positive measure that people in my riding are talking about. The other thing that they appreciate is that we've made changes to the lifetime capital gains exemption. That not only did we increase it to $800,000 per person, but we've indexed it to inflation. So it's not going to erode. We won't have to come back and continually improve or increase the lifetime capital gains exemption for those farmers who are exiting the industry or making sales, but they were going to be able to have that exemption in place against any of their lifetime capital gains. So this is important not just to our farmers, but it's important to our commercial fishers, and it's important to our small businesses, and it helps with that intergenerational transfer of those operations, whether it's the mom and pop store, whether it's the family operation, farm operation, or whether it's the family commercial fishing operation. It helps with those transfers into the next generation, and it allows those that have worked so hard, and often we all talk about those farmers, that they never, they live pretty much cash poor and asset rich. You know, they're sitting on a lot of land, they're sitting on a lot of capital assets, but they often don't realize that their true economic net worth because they've either had some difficult times in the marketplace, or when they do have good times, like they're having this year in both the cattle industry and the grain industry, what do? They invest back in the farm. They're buying more land, they're buying more equipment, buying more machinery, paying off debt, and so the only time that they really get to cash out is when they do transfer that farm operation to the next generation, and this is where this really comes into play for a farm operation. Whether it's a family operation, whether it's a partnership with a couple of other families together, or they've actually gone and put together a corporation, but still, even corporate farms in my area are still family farms. They just incorporated because that's the best way to go forward from the standpoint of their farm from a tax basis. Now, I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that the other big announcement is our continued support for Genome Canada at $165 million. We know that the biggest benefits that have been generated in Western Canadian agriculture, in Eastern Canadian agriculture, has been through animal and plant breeding. Those increases in productivity, those abilities to reduce the need for more inputs into our farm operations because of better plant breeding, because of better animal breeding, really do pay off dividends and put money into the pockets of our farmers. So we are really excited about that, both from cattle industry, the hog industry, and of course the grain and oilseeds business. Now, a lot of people often are shocked to learn that in Selkirk Interlake, in Manitoba, out in the prairies, that we have a huge commercial fishery. And they too are benefiting from things that are happening through this budget, as I was talking already with the lifetime capital gains tax exemption, increasing that and indexing it to inflation. But our fisheries overall, from both a commercial standpoint and from a recreational standpoint, is so important. I got Lake Winnipeg and Lake Manitoba, and in this budget is a $10 million conservation fund to help with enhancing the fishery, to help protect wildlife habitat, to ensure that those, I guess, really highly valued fish species that people want to go out there and catch, whether it's walleye, whether it's northern pike, whether they're out there fishing even mullet. We want to make sure that those fisheries are protected and that it will benefit not just the habitat, but it will enhance tourism, it will enhance opportunity, and it's going to be working towards the overall fishery, both from a commercial side and a recreational standpoint. And the focus really is on the recreational fishery and all the tourism dollars and enjoyment that we get out of the recreational fishery. Up and down my streets in my community, it's completely loaded up with small business enterprises. And this budget really speaks to them in how, they really are the main reason why we're seeing 1 million net new jobs is because it's growing through our small businesses first and foremost. They represent 98% of all businesses in Canada, employ over 2/3 of Canadians, work in small and medium-sized enterprises, And that is what makes up the large portion of my riding from a business standpoint. So again, the lifetime capital gains exemption works to them. The expanding the small business with the hiring credit for small business for 1 year, $225 million, helps them increase that employability content and job opportunities in our riding. And we're extending and expanding the hiring credit for small businesses so that the costs associated with creating those jobs are being offset with this budget. So, Mr. Speaker, you know, we are really excited about what's happening and how it's impacting on my riding of Selkirk-Interlake.
Questions and comments.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In fact, I just have one question for my colleague. Since the Conservatives got their majority, which means in 2011, we saw a real degradation, really, in terms of environmental regulations, but particularly some little problems in the area of science, doing away with certain positions for scientists, for example. And the government has prevented some scientists from speaking. So my question is on one part of C4 in particular. Why continue in the same vein? My colleague who represents an agricultural riding, he has daughters, I know he has a lovely family. Why do away with jobs in the most prestigious research center that the National Research Council has? Why do away with science? Why eliminate almost half of those jobs? Why, Mr. Speaker?
Secretary to the Minister of National Defence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank my colleague for her question as well as her compliment for my family. I appreciate that very much. And we've had a chance to work together on a number of issues, so I do appreciate her comment. You know, on the issue of environmental permitting, you know, what we've done as a government is reduce the redundancy and the duplication of services between different jurisdictions. And, Mr. Speaker, that has really saved dollars for municipalities, for our province, for businesses, including agricultural operations, on having to go through the exact same process at the municipal, provincial, and federal levels to get permits. And so it's not about reducing the need for science, because the science is still the actual determining factor on the environmental permit. We just don't need every level of government rubber stamping the exact same process. Right. And so what we're trying to do is make it simpler and easier and reduce red tape, not just for businesses, but for farmers, for fishers, and for our municipalities and provinces who are trying to do the right thing and ultimately still put the environment first.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Cape Breton-Canso.
Very much, Mr. Speaker, and I've had an opportunity to go to Selkirk-Interlake and in my friend's riding, and it's a great spot. We had visited there just after the major floods. I think they're about 4 years ago, and I know a lot of the talk around that time was concerns around global warming, and, you know, is this what we're going to expect going forward? The concern I have, and it's not dissimilar to the last question, it's around science and the science sector, and we see this outcry from scientists over the last number of months and really the last couple of years, saying that science has been devastated. We hear that in the Department of the Environment. We hear that in Fisheries and Oceans. Now, I'm sure the government is sort of taking money from all other sources and shell gaming it around, but what's my colleagues' take on the outcry from the science community? Are we to pay no attention to what it is they've been saying? They're very adamant that this government has turned their back on science, and I'd like his comments on that.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk-Interlake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my friend from Cape Breton for his comment. And, you know, I used to chair in the last Parliament the Environment Committee, and I'm very proud of the work that we do through Environment Canada. A lot of people don't realize that Environment Canada is the 5th largest research organization in the world. The other 4 bigger ones are actually in the United States, but the biggest in Canada is Environment Canada, and the 5th biggest in the world is Environment Canada. They still are doing significant research. They are still publishing peer-reviewed papers. They're still out there speaking, whether it's from Environment Canada, Agriculture Canada, Health Canada. Those scientists are out there making their presentations and talking to the media. There might be a few sour grapes that you hear from time to time because some scientists haven't been able to get out there and say what they want to say, but it's because they aren't talking about their science. They're talking about other issues. So if they're going to go through the proper steps and processes, that they can actually get out there and speak about the research. We're seeing it all the time. Thousands of documents published annually, hundreds of speeches given by our scientists, and that hasn't changed one iota. The overall science need hasn't been reduced. It has been refocused. And we want to make sure that we are addressing the concerns that are being brought forward by Canadians, and that's where we're focusing our work.
Absolutely.